It's an old trend in horror games to have a main character play out the lost in impossible structures dimension game. You get to a certain point in the gameplay, usually while exploring some place, and then suddenly parts of the environment change. You look back and the corridor is not there anymore, or you get trapped in a loop. You get the gist of it. I feel like this is an old trend that only got reinforced after games like PT. And I also think this is a poor resource, this is poor game design. Not because it's inherently bad, but just because it's overused and usually in the wrong way. When I started watching a Mouthwashing gameplay and the first scenes of the game used this same trope, I was immediately thrown off a little. Because people had been praising this game for being one of the best psychological horror games we got in recent years, and this kind of resource just doesn't click with me. But the more I watched the gameplay, the more I understood where the developers were going with the plot, and suddenly gameplay scenarios like this felt not only very fitting, but also extremely enriching. For anything else, this video will contain spoilers. I'll try not to mention too many direct events, just in case you haven't played it yet but still want to watch the video, but there's just so much I can keep a secret and still talk about what I want to talk about in this video, which is how mouthwashing plays with your primal fears. Now, what even is a primal fear is up to debate, because this is no scientific field, so you'll find different answers to what count as a primal fear or not. But I tend to classify as a primal fear anything that represented a real and absolute danger in a primal society. Think darkness, since it was so easy to get predated by wild animals in the night. Think isolation, since social bonding is necessary for reproduction and keeping the species alive. Think death, because, well, isn't the purpose of being alive staying alive? Now, when we're talking about the horror genre, we're talking about media that wants to scare you or make you feel uncomfortable. So I feel like most horror media succeeds in being scary and dreadful when it accomplishes this simple task, which is not that simple at the end of the day. It makes you feel unsafe. And in order for a game or a film to accomplish this, they have to immerse you the right way. One thing that horror games usually do wrong is failing to set up the plot correctly. Before you feel scared, you have to care for the characters, or feel intrigued by the plot, or feel immersed in it. Different games that succeed at this do this in different ways. FNAF, for instance, demands a lot of your concentration and task management, so immersion is a big plus. Silent Hill uses an intense atmosphere and intriguing plot devices to its favor, and Mouthwashing makes you puzzled. Again, spoiler alert, the very beginning of the game shows you a scene of the captain of the ship actively routing the ship to an asteroid. It's not like he lost control of it, you actually play as the man in first person, doing everything you can so that you guys are routed to your death. And then stuff go incredibly wrong and he becomes crippled, to say the least. And you get that itch in your brain. That feeling that something's wrong and you don't know what exactly. This is important because the game makes it very clear from the very beginning that something very wrong has passed. For some reason, which we don't yet know, the captain decided to kill the whole crew. And now we can't even ask him why because, well, look at his state. The man's barely alive. He has no lips, but he's alive. And this is frightening. You have a crippled man who you know can't do anything to make you any harm. He has no legs, no arms. He's not dangerous, at least not anymore. But he tried to kill you all, and he's alive, looking at you all, and taking his damn painkillers every day. This feeling of uncertainty puts you on the edge of your seat, and that's why introducing the next two primal fears is so effective. The first primal fear I realized right off the bat when I started watching the gameplay was the fear of disease or being crippled. One of the worst things that could happen to us humans in the past was being crippled. Thankfully, nowadays we can manage to live well in society if we lose a leg or lose a sense, but in the past, it meant you'd be left to die. You would probably die an agonizing death, alone, and feeling intense pain throughout the whole process. Mouthwashing takes this concept and elevates it the most it possibly can. The, let's say, mascot of the game is Captain Curly after the asteroid crash. That's the face you see in 99% of the thumbnails in videos about this game. It's what I'm drawing right now. And by far, it's the most memorable face in the whole game, because, well, this one doesn't deal with monsters. At least not real ones. You know about the horse drill and stuff. I don't gotta remind you of that. Then that's even his eye in the game's promo art. This freaked up man with no lips, no skin, no arms nor legs, in intense pain, eye popping out of his socket, or what once was his eye socket, is scary. Not because he's running after you, he wouldn't do that even if he could, but because he represents a state which feels agonizing to look at. The game makes sure we will notice and remember that, because we're playing as Jimmy, and Jimmy is the one pushing the pills down the man's throat. Remember, he has no lips. You will hear the sound of him doing that. Sometimes it will sound worse than others. And his eyes will follow you. If you've finished the whole game, you know why, but the reason doesn't really matter for a player who's still figuring out the plot. His eyes will scare you nonetheless, because the man is clearly in a state of pure agony. He wants to die so bad, but he can't. He can't even kill himself. All he can do is feel the crippling anxiety, no pun intended, of being in such a terrible state of existence. The second primal fear is a fear that some of you may not agree on me when I say it's a primal fear, but stick with me for a second. I'm talking about madness. Because abnormal behavior might be seen as potentially dangerous, everybody wants to fit in. Being alone in nature is dangerous, so madness is a big no-no. Whenever we're dealing with madness in gaming, it's important that we know how we represent it. There's good and bad ways to do it, as anything in gaming, but I feel like the best way is making sure you actually find out the character's madness throughout the game, because in the eyes of a mad person, they are acting just fine. It feels reasonable that madness will resonate more with us, and in a scarier way if we take our time to give us hints at it. I tend to think that madness is at its most dangerous and scary state when it's not an absolute constant, but something present enough so you know it will become a massive problem again. And as we play from the perspective of both Jimmy and Captain Curly, we get to see moments in which Curly is out of his mind of some sort. He never sounds really dangerous, but again, we had seen that initial scene, so he's definitely not sane. And we see his surroundings changing, and familiar places become impossible structures, just like we did at the start of the game. As we play as present Jimmy, and see the same things happening to him, parallels between these two characters start being formed. And most of this madness thing seems to be associated with the role of being a captain, which makes sense. It might be a very stressing role to be in, but as we get closer and closer to the big reveal of the game, we start understanding what the hell is going on. And as a last spoiler alert, we get to understand that itch in our brain. That itch that we got from the very beginning. That feeling that there was something missing, that something was off. And then we get to understand what Jimmy did. How he sexually abused Anya, and how he was the one we saw routing the ship to an asteroid in the initial scene, so he wouldn't face the consequences. We were not playing as Curly, as we thought. That was Jimmy. We start to see his behavior towards Anya throughout the whole game in a different light. His praises to Captain Curly's deeds as well, now they sound and feel very distorted. And even little jokes here and there start to make more sense. Jimmy is completely out of his mind. He's the one who's insane. And once we understand what really happened in the beginning of the gameplay starts to become more and more insane, with its most intense psychological and haunting scenes happening all at once. Definitely a risky move from a gameplay point of view, but they nailed it. And as we approach the end, we get all the anxiety and discomfort from seeing Jimmy act as a madman, not only trying to kill the crew in a ship crash, but ultimately succeeding in doing so, with mental and physical abuse to Anya, extreme negligence with Daisuke, and a freaking bullet to Sun-C's heart. He killed them all, in different ways, one by one. Except for one of them. Curly. Throughout the whole game, he was telling Curly he'd get them out of that situation, that he would save them. We see the same sentence again and again and again. And at the end, he does kinda hold up to what he said. He really gets Curly out of this. There's exactly one last cryogenic chamber working. And as he gets prepared to kill himself, he puts Curly in that chamber and locks him there. The one who wanted to die the most. The one who knew it all and saw everything unfolding without being able to do a thing. Feeling excruciating pain every single second of his lasting life. The one whom we knew for sure, it doesn't matter what happened, would never have a normal life again. That's the only one who got put in the chamber, the one who got saved, and who will probably welcome a different world 20 years from now. The one who will be kept alive not only with this intense trauma and pain from the last 6 months on a hell of a ship with a crazy man, but also for much, much longer. This is how Mouthwashing makes sure to mess with your primal fears. There's much more about this game which I haven't talked about, nor could in such a short video. This is a dance game, and I'm pretty sure other people have talked more and better about it than I could ever do, so definitely check other creators' take on it. But above all that, make sure to play the game. If you can't or don't want to, make sure to at least watch a gameplay on it, at least. It definitely deserves your time. And even though the game has close to zero replayability, I'm planning on buying it sometime soon, just so I can pay, quite literally, my respect to the developers. This is an amazing piece of work, and I really, really feel blessed to have discovered this gem this year. If you liked this video, consider helping your homie out and clicking that like button right there and subscribing to my channel. I'm really aiming for 500 subscribers until the end of 2024, so that would mean the world to me. Also, let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on Mouthwashing, how did you like it, how was your experience playing it, and at last, thank you for watching this video. I really, really appreciate your time, and I will see you next time. Peace.
Cleans deeper and kills bacteria left behind after brushing. Use Listerine daily for a fresh